and welcome to the Quantum Egg podcast. Today we're going to be talking about, drumroll please, Harry Potter.
Yay!
Oh God. So we did want to talk about it, I think, for obvious reasons.
I think we had a discussion about whether it would be right to talk about it to draw attention to something which, quite frankly, we all want to die.
Yeah.
And we want it to go away.
Yeah.
And whether it was right, to open discussion on it again. But the discussion's going, so...
When you say you want it to die, you mean the transphobia, right?
The transphobia, but also just Harry Potter itself.
Yeah, the culture of it.
Yeah, I just want it to, nobody goes sick over... The two things that adults go sick over, which I think are a bit, what are you doing, is Harry Potter and Disney.
Yeah.
And that's not to say you can't enjoy things. I just think when you let them rule your life...
It's questionable.
It's questionable.
It's also very, it's falling into that capitalist trap of how you consume things, because I feel like with Disney and Harry Potter there's a massive culture around buying things and displaying it, and it's a lot of kind of posturing involved in it.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree.
Well, Harry Potter and consumerism has been kind of one of its defining traits since day one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of buying and selling and commodification in Harry Potter itself. To be a student in Hogwarts, you have to buy stuff.
Yeah.
You have to consume stuff. You have to spend money. And it's interesting that in a society where you can kind of conjure anything and magic is a thing, that's so prevalent.
Yeah, I think it's one of... I do believe that's one of the guilty pleasures of Harry Potter as well, is that, part of the fantasy is that Harry gets to go to this world and it's handed quite literally a pot of gold. And it's go out and get whatever you want. Which is, we'd all love to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's appealing, but also when looking at it in comparison to the fantasy genre, the fact you have to buy your wand.
Yeah, well, I think this is a big part of section 1, which we're going to talk about, and how it's ingrained itself in our culture.
Yes.
Why is Harry Potter such a massive part of, I was going to say British culture, but I think just Western culture in general now, I would say. It's a worldwide phenomenon, isn't it? And it's massive. So when you say, Harry Potter is a big part of our culture, what do we think of?
I think, for me, I think of the generation that we're sort of a part of, sort of on the edges of, where I think they really struggled growing up with not feeling like they're the people above them, the people raising them, were representing them, and feeling very alienated and trying to make a lot of political change. And I think Harry Potter was I think escape into fiction became a massive thing for that generation. And it kind of carried on into adulthood. That's what I kind of get from it.
Wait, which generation are you talking about?
I'm talking about the millennials generation.
Okay.
I'm not, I'm saying that as someone who came from that generation as well.
Yeah, I just don't think that's right.
No,
I think it's actually a lot more simple than that. I don't think it's anything to do with politics. I think it's to do with the fact that Harry Potter arrived at the advent of the internet.
And the new millennium.
Yeah.
The
internet was in its early days. There hadn't been an opportunity for fandom to develop like it developed for Harry Potter before, for people to have as much contact and, to have something to do besides actually reading the books or watching the films. You could go and read stories, you could go talk about it. There was how many forums were there? There was so much Harry Potter drama on the internet.
It was massive. And I think when I originally wrote this script, a lot of it was to do with Christmas and the fact that Harry Potter is such a massive Christmas tradition. And I think that still stands. I think we can chat about that a bit, because in my family growing up, we always watched the films at Christmas. And, it was kind of a Christmas film, but not a lot of it is about Christmas. There's just a section in each one, usually, where they kind of have a little Christmassy moment, and it's all, oh, what did you get? And it'll be the coolest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, on that, it's not just you and your family in that respect, because TV puts it on at Christmas.
They
So
do,
like
yeah.
ITV has always got Harry Potter on at Christmas time. So it's like readily available and people want you to associate it with Christmas as well, I think. In terms of like, because I think you were talking about the origins of Harry Potter and how it became so popular, Beau. Whereas like how it's like ingrained itself into our society, like I think of like the small ways. So even just like in high school and college, it was really normal to be like, oh, what house are you in?
Yeah, what house are we in? We all did that. We've all fallen victim to it.
Yeah.
For a long time.
You know, I think it's so, you know, you do something, you'd be like, oh, I'm such a Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think you've ever said that in your life.
No.
But I'm really glad you did that.
But I feel like that was pretty common.
Yeah, it
And
was.
another like personal example I can think of is me and Seb did classics at college. We're not posh, it was the only school that did it in the Northwest. But when we were doing it, the way that our teacher, shout out to Julia, who was amazing, but the way that she sort of got us to relate to the source material of the myths was through Harry Potter as well.
Yeah.
You know, because J.K. Rowling lifts a lot from not only names, there's a lot of like Roman names, you know, Sirius off the top of my head. Lupin is another one, I think.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. The spells as well. A lot of Latin in there.
Yeah.
But that's how she sort of related it to us.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And I remember her saying as well, when we were doing about Troy, saying that Hector was a big Gryffindor, you know. There he is defending his family, being brave and loyal. He doesn't, he might lose, but he's protecting people. Oh, he's so brave. Gryffindor, woo, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, when it was related to us in those terms, we understood. That's quite disturbing.
Yeah.
That we understood that so well. You know, we were able to box people into these 4 traits, you know, these 4 defining things.
People love to be part of a group.
Oh, yeah. People love a box,
Being part of
don't
a
they?
group. I mean, I think it's the most natural thing in the world, really, isn't it? To want to be part of something. Like, and I feel like that's also, like, what I was trying to get at with, like, the rise of nerd culture. Like, the fact that I think there's certain things that come along and people kind of, like, create these communities and they connect over, like, a certain thing. Sorry, I don't know where I'm going with that. But
No, but it's true. Yeah, people connect over it, and it was a big... I mean, for me as well, so I want to talk a little bit about the books now.
Okay.
Just a little bit. So, you never read the books, Charlie.
No.
Why?
I feel like whenever I say this, it comes across as me just being edgy.
Go on, be edgy.
I picked up the books a few times, and I just didn't think they were very good.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for this. And just to say, I love the films. Like, I used to go see the films when they came out with my auntie. It was a big tradition. So I'm not like, I wasn't like, I hate Harry Potter. But I read a lot of Diana Wynne Jones when I was younger, and she writes on a lot of similar topics. Very stunningly similar, actually.
And Diana Wynne Jones came before
Yes.
Harry Potter.
She was
Yeah.
writing in the 70s and 80s
Yeah.
prolifically. Had a few books in the 90s and early 2000s as well. Actually, I don't think she was writing in the 70s. I think it was just the 80s. But yeah, I saw a lot of similarities in terms of witch schools and a character called He Who Shall Not Be Named.
Interesting.
Yeah. And Diana Wynne Jones, actually, I will talk about this a bit later in a different section, but she does speak to Harry Potter, and she doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about it.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd read her, so when I picked these up, I was just sort of like, oh, it's not as good. It's a bit disappointing. I sort of also hated the idea about reading about school, even a magical one.
Right.
I was like, I don't want to.
really?
Yeah.
That's a surprise to me.
I was very much an epic fantasy reader. Like, I wanted a different world. Like, a completely different, separate world. A journey, a quest.
Yeah.
But there was one... Oh, God. It's actually making me cringe thinking about it now. But there was one line in the first book of Harry Potter, And notoriously everyone says, the first few books aren't very good, make it to the third one, fourth one, and then you'll like it. Still didn't like those, by the way.
Yeah.
But in the first book, there's this bit where she describes a hat like a flat grey dumpster. And this sticks in, maybe I've made this up, maybe I've dreamed it.
Is it, no, I think I know what you're talking about. Is it when Harry was going to wear a uniform and it looks like grey elephant skin or something like that?
Maybe. To be honest, there was a few descriptions where I was just, even as like a 10-year-old child, I was like, what?
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah. Having kind of tried to go back to the books when I was older and reread them, I was like, oh God, this is not good. This is not well written.
No.
But
I
did not notice that as a child, which I'll talk about now. I mean, both me and Beau, we read the books as a kid. I was obsessed. And I think part of the reason for that is I got into the books when I was in year 8, so I would have been about 12, 13, maybe about 12. And I had no friends at the time that I picked up the books because I'd fallen out with my friend group. It was very dramatic. So I would read these books over and over again. And it was because I was like, I want this to be my school life because I hated school. Hated it. Hate. Awful. Did not enjoy. Oh.
0 out of 10.
Minus 10 out of 10. It was horrendous, especially at that time. I remember just wanting to leave so badly. But obviously I didn't. So what did I do? I read Harry Potter all day, every day. And yeah, I mean, even then I remember feeling uncomfortable with some of the themes, but it was such an escape route for me that I just didn't care. I didn't want to care. You know, I kind of blocked them out. What about you, Beau?
Yeah, it was like, I think it was, I can't remember like a specific reason why I read them like that, but I was obsessed from probably about year 5 onwards. I kind of went through a massive phase of reading it while I was in primary school, and then I kind of like fell off a little bit after that. And then I ended up coming back to it at times in my life when I was struggling. I think that's a big thing. But it was also always a massive source of like warmth and positivity for me. And I actually didn't read that many different books when I was a kid. Like I obviously read Harry Potter. I read a lot of Jacqueline Wilson, and I read a lot of kind of like teen romance books kind of thing. So I like to return to things that I knew. And I think I returned again and again to Harry Potter because it was something that, that I knew so well. I remember actually when I first read the 5th book, I got to the end of it, I like threw it across the room, and I remember thinking to myself like, I need to wait a couple of years before I read the next one. Like after Sirius Black died, I think I was like 8 reading that, and I was like, no, upset. I'm too young for this.
Yeah, well, what I will say about Harry Potter, like, I'm not surprised it was popular with kids, like, at all. Like Seb was saying, it's a really great escape, do you know what I mean? And it's you go in and you're the special chosen one, because Harry isn't a character, no offence. We've had this discussion many times, but, you know, Harry is the insert for the reader, and you go and you're special and you're rich and you get to make potions in class instead of doing maths. Like I can see why it was really popular. What bothers me is what we were alluding to before, and I think has come up recently with I can never say her last name, Miriam
Margolyes,
talking about Harry Potter adults.
Yeah, Harry Potter adults are like the new Disney adults, aren't they? People, I think, she was talking about Harry Potter themed weddings and things like that, and you can see exactly why it's a bit like, oh, maybe let it go.
Yeah, I think the thing that got about it for me, because I understand some people being a little bit offended by what she said, because essentially what she said was she worries about these people and they should grow out of it, essentially. And I understand that, you shouldn't have to grow out of anything, but I think there are some things you should grow out of, personally. But, you know, enjoying something is just enjoying something. But the way people reacted to her saying that is what I think is interesting. It was as if
she'd said something so monumentally terrible that she deserved to never speak again. And it's like, I mean, it's her opinion for a start. It's just an opinion. If you really feel that strongly about it, don't let it bother you. But also, you know, it's cult-like.
Yeah.
I think the following. And it kind of always has been.
Yeah. I think, like, the massive problem for me with, like, people who are, like, you know, when people express concern or cringe or whatever at Disney adults and Harry Potter adults, I feel like it's less about... For me, it's always a thing which deserves a lot of, like, quite adult criticism because of its ethics. You know what I mean? You know, if someone's really obsessed with something where, you know, but they're able to be like, oh, but I know all of this stuff about it. It's that kind of, like, childlike... what's the word? Like, standing by something... like, and being really offended when someone else has any kind of criticism.
They're defensive
for it.
of it.
Defensiveness,
so
yeah.
This brings me into the next section. Last episode, we touched on Russell T Davies' habit of using fat characters as comic relief in Doctor Who. So listen to that episode to get the full insight on it. But now I want to touch on the fatphobia in Harry Potter. So arguably, the very first book, The Philosopher's Stone, begins in this fashion. In the third sentence of the book, Mr. Dursley is described as a big, beefy man with hardly any neck. And Harry's cousin, Dudley, is later described as looking like a large pink beach ball. So both of them are contemptible people. And this isn't the first time that we see fat characters who turn out to be terrible people in Harry Potter. So there's an essay titled From Pigtails to Fat Ladies, Fatphobia in the Harry Potter Universe, where a user by the name of Lady Psyker, I think I'm saying that right, writes the following. So they say, throughout the original 7 books, the only people we see who are described as fat, as opposed to pleasantly plump, like Molly Weasley, the Hogwarts Express Food Trolley Witch, or Pomona Sprout, are bad people. From Dolores Umbridge to Crabbe and Goyle and Slughorn, being bigger tends to correlate to being awful people, or at the very least, awfully morally grey. So is this something that you noticed as kids, like, or is it something that only recently came to your attention?
I think I always associated, like, the whole, like, people being able to tell who people are by what they look like. It's very kind of Roald Dahl in nature. It's very kind of... I think that's a really common thing in a lot of kids' books, so I didn't look into it that deeply.
No, I didn't either.
No, it's something where you're just kind of like, haha, we can laugh at this fat character because it's funny.
And it was so normalised. Fatphobia is so normalised
like,
that we didn't really question it. Maybe we should have.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that hopefully, you know, nowadays we can examine in a bit more detail. Cause
but we don't.
We don't.
No. Fatphobia is getting worse. As far as I'm concerned, I think the return of heroin chic has a lot to do with that, which is directly tied to Ozempic. Is that how you say it?
Yes, Ozempic.
What's Ozempic?
So it's a drug that originally was prescribed to people with diabetes, but people have started taking it to lose weight. Basically, it's become like a diet drug, which is terrible because now there's a shortage and people with diabetes cannot get Ozempic. But this, I think this is really interesting when we look at, so the fatphobia in Harry Potter, when we look at J.K. Rowling herself and all the work she's had done since this came out. So she would have been she was 27 when it first got published in the 90s. And the 90s and 80s, like this was a huge time for that heroin chic aesthetic, like you say. And being skinny was like, you know, the epitome of beauty. And I think, you know, I don't want to read too much into it, but I don't think I am. I think this really comes through in her writing and her own attitudes. And, you know, she's tried to deny that she's had any plastic surgery done. But it's like, well, you know, you look at pictures of you from the 90s compared to now, and it's like either you've aged backwards or There's some Botox in there, hun.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
I think it's really obvious. I mean, I know she thinks that she's a feminist, which I think is really funny. But in the way that she writes women and the way that she considers what a real woman is by how they look a lot.
Yeah.
Because when I think about the characters in her book who are... They're very mother maiden crone, aren't they? They're very like... There's the motherly, matronly characters who are a bit plump, but that's okay because they're mothers and that's what they do. And
they look after people.
Yeah, but then the bad mums are really skinny and bony and tall and gaunt and all the rest of it. Or, you know, I don't know how she describes Umbridge, but I'm pretty sure she's described
she's overweight.
Is she overweight?
Yeah, that's what I said in the quote. She's overweight. Crab and Goyle are. Slughorn. There's a few others as well.
Who is Rita Skeeter? How's she described?
I can't remember. She's quite glamorous and bony and
Mannish.
I think.
Oh, is she?
Yeah. She has telltale mannish hands. Yeah.
Which, you know, makes my point, doesn't it? About, you know, the nice married women are matronly and plump and the horrible ones are skinny.
I think what we're also getting to here is the crossover between fatphobia and transphobia.
Yeah.
You know, and how there is a very set way that gendered people are supposed to look.
Yeah.
And if they don't look like that assigned gender characteristic, then they are sneaky or evil or not good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is that sort of, you know, twit mentality from
Yeah.
Roald Dahl, is that the inside affects the outside.
And it's interesting how this only ever relates to the women characters in the books. As far as I know, there are no kind of flamboyant men in...
There's Lockhart.
Oh, yeah, but he's kind of more... I don't know. I always read him as very posh and just up himself.
Yeah, I would say he's the most effeminate man
Yeah.
in the series, and he's still punished.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
For being too vain.
But for the most part, actually, this is something I wanted to touch on. So Dolores Umbridge, so she's quite a mannish character, as she's described, I believe. And she is punished in a way that is... it's sexual assault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I can say that, but...
Well, you can say it. It happens. It happens in the books.
Quote. I'm going to find it.
Yeah.
Which heavily implies that she was taken advantage of by centaurs.
And it's played off as a joke. In a kid's book, which,
Yeah.
I mean, at that time I was old enough to understand what was happening, and it did make me feel very strange. I'm really glad they don't go into it in the films.
No.
But she is still carried off.
Yeah, she's carried off, and then she reacts violently towards them, and when she sees them, she's really afraid of them. Where is it? Let me find it.
It's also interesting the connotations of so she was right to call them savages, you know, because she hates everything that's like a half-breed, and that's supposed to be awful, obviously, because it's racist. But then the creatures do that to her.
But they are savages. They're seen as savages. They live in the forest. They do something very questionable to her, which is never fully explained, but heavily implied. And, well, it's just got everything, hasn't it? Racism, transphobia, fatphobia.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm just going to put another quote in, if no one minds. So this is one from our beloved late sci-fi author Ursula Le Guin, who said about Harry Potter, "I've no great opinion of it. When so many adult critics were carrying on about the incredible originality of the first Harry Potter book, I read it to find out what the fuss was about and remained somewhat puzzled. It seemed like a lively kid's fantasy crossed with a school novel, good fare for its age group, but stylistically ordinary, imaginatively derivative, and ethically rather mean-spirited." So we've talked a bit about the ethics and, you know, the fact it's a school novel. Derivative as well. You mentioned Diana Wynne Jones.
Yeah.
Diana Wynne Jones, and I put Neil Gaiman as well.
Yeah, he wrote a book which is stunningly similar.
You love saying
Sorry,
that. Stunningly similar.
Stunningly similar. Have I said that before?
Yeah.
That's funny. I'm just going to find out what the title of the book was. But he wrote this in the 90s? I think.
I think I've seen this cover before. Doesn't it have a boy with black hair and glasses on a broom with an owl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does.
Absolutely. And it was written 25 years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it's the thing about talking about derivative fantasy is it is hard, because fantasy is a genre that like uses the same tropes over and over again.
Yes.
You know, Harry Potter is not the only story which has reused the Chosen One narrative, or, you know,
No, but...
Dark Wizards or things like that. So in some ways, I am sort of like, it was all fair game, everything that she sort of like picked up and went for. What bothers me about it is J.K. Rowling is a terrible world builder. Like, a terrible world builder. Her world is full of so many holes, I could use it as a sieve. You know?
Give us an example. What do you mean?
Oh, God. I mean, we've been over one already, which this is a world in which you can conjure whatever you want.
Yes.
But money is still required.
Yes.
There's still poor people.
There's still poor
There's a
people.
class system.
Time turners.
Time turners, time
exist.
travel. You can have time travel, but no one thought to go back and, like, I don't know, kill baby Voldemort.
Yeah. They have truth serums and spells which make you tell the truth, but somehow Sirius Black had to stay in Azkaban for 12 years.
Yeah.
There was probably some ridiculous explanation for that, but I can't remember what it was.
I don't know. I don't think there was.
She doesn't
Does she
explain
not explain it?
No. Also, if you've got a world in which wizards exist, why are humans still running the planet?
Yeah, it's a bit...
Why haven't they disapparated nukes? You know?
Well, this is what, like, you know, with just to segue a little bit into Crimes of Grindelwald and that whole series, it's like they actually touch on the fact that wizards were around during World War II and they just chose not to get involved in all that, and it's like that's not very good, is it?
But it also comes down to, I remember seeing a review about Harry Potter, and one of the things that said it really got my goat. Really got my
really
goat.
got your goats.
Personally, because as Seb and Bo know, I love folklore.
Yeah.
I have a particular love for British folklore, and, you know, it's separated out into counties because Britain is not a homogenous place. J.K. Rowling just plucks out folkloric creatures from anywhere she desires and just puts them in there. So you get, like, werewolves and boggarts and vampires all existing in this space. But for what?
The idea to me that every time someone saw a dragon, an aura would appear and make them forget, I thought was, even in a magical world, ridiculous. I was like, how?
Is that how she explained it?
Yeah, so, you know, that giants and dragons and stuff exist in the UK.
How are they policing that?
Literally.
How are they
There's not
doing
even
that?
that many wizards.
No.
Like, there's not that many auras. How the hell? That must be their whole day, is just kind of popping up places and just zapping people.
Like Men in
with this.
Black. Just,
Yeah.
you know.
But for me, it's like, if you've got a society, you know, a magical society in which wizards are kind of top of the food chain, because that's the sort of thing where she's introduced, you know, other creatures, like, say, I don't know, house elves are sort of subservient.
Oh, can't wait to talk about that.
So if this is the case, and vampires exist, surely that would have some consequence, like, you know,
Yeah.
The fact that vampires aren't like a massive part of the story always really, like, I was like, huh? Because
they're literally like superhuman blood-sucking creatures. Like,
yeah.
Personally, I'd be more worried about them.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
never seem to come up. Really.
There's one at Slughorn's party.
A vampire?
Yeah.
Really?
And he has in the 6th book, it's the Half-Blood Prince, there's a party where he invites all the students that he loves the most, you know, because he has his little fan club, like his favourite club. And there's a vampire there. And I think it's just described as looking vaguely uncomfortable and hungry. But it's...
So they're not just evil either.
No, they just turn up for funsies.
Okay, so In this world, we can then assume that vampires are somewhat integrated into wizard population. Yet Harry has never met one.
Except at Slughorn's party.
Except at Slughorn's
Where it looks
party.
miserable.
Like, where do they live?
At least we know something about the werewolves, even though werewolf lore is terrible.
Well, this
as well.
is the other thing. The werewolf lore is terrible. And it's just lazy. It's just lazy.
Oh, God. Charlie's going red
I just...
with anger.
If there's one thing... If there's one thing that makes me angry, it's when people say, "Oh, J.K. Rowling wrote such a good world." No, she didn't!
No.
She kind of picked and chose, like, things. It's like you say, she took from a very broad pool of folklore, which wasn't, really cohesively thought about, plucked the bits that she was like, that'll do, that'll go in, and kind of wedged them in there without thought or, thinking about the consequences that would have on the world and the characters and any of that, really.
I kind of like, when I was a kid, this is how I justified it. So I don't know if this is how she justified it, but I was always like, well, the fact that it didn't make sense, kind of, I found it charming. I was like, oh, this is a world where anything's possible. It's all weird and wonderful. Dumbledore's running around with his socks on, like, his mismatching socks, and he's in the books. He's very kind of mad.
Yeah, he is a bit eccentric. Also, apparently gay.
Yeah.
But we never read about that. We just have to be told on Twitter.
Nor is it going to be in the film in which he is a main character with
No.
his love interest. It's just not part of it.
No, they were like brothers. Is that what they say? He's like a
Something
brother
like
to
that.
me. Something like that. Something really cringe.
I think Jude Law was trying really hard to put it in with his eyes.
As he always does.
But that was about
this
it.
Is gay. This is gay.
Guys, this is gay.
But yeah. Well, yeah, I think we've established that the world building and the... on that, sorry, just before I carry on, one thing that always bothered me as a kid, even when I was deep in my Harry Potter obsession, was the house elves. I remember just hating Dobby with such, how do you say it? Vehemence?
Yeah.
I hated him with animus. I hated him, and I was like, why do I hate this pathetic character so much? It's because he enjoyed being a slave.
Yeah.
I know there's that whole Dobby liberation thing, but then he's seen as a freak by the other house elves for enjoying being free, and it's like, why have we done this? The slavery where the slaves enjoy being slaves. What is this saying? What is this teaching? What are we?
Yes.
Do you remember Winky?
Yeah. How
Winky...
could I forget that stupid character?
Oh my god, she...
Can you tell me who Winky is?
Yeah, so
I don't know.
She is the house elf of the Crouches. So she's Barty Crouch's house elf, and she is part of the big plot in the Goblet of Fire that didn't make it into the films. Not that anyone cares, but it wasn't really part of it. And she ends up working at the kitchens when Barty Crouch dies, and then Barty Crouch Jr. is outed and put in I think the Dementors kiss him or something, don't they?
Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, she's part of the kitchens, and she just cries all the time and wants to serve, and then gets drunk because she can't serve her master anymore. And it's
She's an alcoholic.
Yeah, she's an alcoholic because her master no longer exists. So her... Yeah, and she hates Dobby because Dobby enjoys his freedom, whereas she hates her freedom. She's like, this is wrong.
Okay, I just want to draw attention to something, because I think one of the many defences, and you sort of said this, Bo, you said it without saying it, but one of the many defences that I see sort of, held for Harry Potter is, it's just not that deep. She didn't think too hard about it. Like, it's, all of this was done and it's just what it is. It's a magical story. The thing is, when you write a book, having written one recently, you spend innumerable hours going over everything you've done, and you make active decisions about the things you want to focus on.
Yeah.
You end up scrapping a lot. Do you know what I mean? You go, oh, well, this is important. And then you look at the stuff and you go, that definitely is important. And I want people to remember this about books, is they don't just, the author doesn't just spit them out one day, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And go, oh, there's a book. They deliberate, they meditate, they research.
Everything is thought about.
Everything.
Yeah, so it's not a happy accident that, you know, these things happen. It says a lot about, if she didn't realise when she was writing this, the you know, the awful connotations of what she was doing, then it says a lot about her own psyche and her internalised bigotry. And there's not just that, there's the goblins as well, being very Jewish coded. There's also Kingsley Shacklebolt, one of the few black characters whose last name is Shacklebolt. This was brought to my attention. I didn't realise this. This was brought to my attention on something. I can't remember what it was, but I came across this and someone pointed this out, and I was like, given the slave connotations you already have, naming one of your few black characters that is really weird.
And having the Irish boy blow things up.
Oh yeah! The Irish boy is constantly blowing things up. There's so many, there's no nuance
It's
at
ridiculous how many stereotypes are in it.
Yeah.
I think that's what Diana probably meant by, you know, mean-spirited, is there's
That
so
was
much...
Ursula.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ursula.
How
Sorry.
dare you?
I've gotten them mixed up before.
Ursula Le Guin.
Ursula said that.
Put some respect on her name. We haven't even touched on J.K. Rowling's actual transphobia yet either.
No.
So what I was going to do was pull up a list of tweets that she's done, but there's actually too many now. Since even writing this script, there's been so much more controversy come out about her. So literally just in the past few days, she's done a bit of Holocaust denial, I believe, which is really interesting given, you know, we've just talked about her goblin stereotypes, and she's basically tried to say that trans people weren't persecuted during the Holocaust, and that you know, the Nazis didn't burn books on trans healthcare. It was actually that in, you know, Berlin, where there was like a big gender research without going too much into it, that's where the term transsexual was coined. And then a lot of books were burned. We've seen this happen before. Happens a lot in history. One of her followers said, if this happened, then why can't we find one page on this so-called trans healthcare thing that happened? Why can't we find any of it? And it's like, the books were burned. The books were burned and this was documented, and
so
remains were found. And, you know, it's a big part of history. And the fact that trans and gay people were persecuted in the Holocaust as well, it's been documented, it's been talked about.
It wasn't only that, it was that the transsexual community in Berlin and in Germany at large was the first group that was persecuted by the Nazis.
Yeah.
They whistle blew, you know, with sort of flagging up this group of freaks, as they would call it, and were like, we need to protect Germany and German children from these, you know, this threat. And that was one of the ways in which they won the support of right-wing minded voters and people who were on the fence. And what does that sound like?
It sounds like now, doesn't it? Which is really fun. Yeah, she recently attacked India Willoughby as well, a presenter, just for no reason. Just came at her and was like calling her a man and stuff, which is actually harassment, you know. And she's been doing this consistently for a few years now. And what I kind of wanted to talk about, I'm not going to go over all the tweets because there's too many. I think if you want to research it, do so. If you don't bother. It's a lot. But this has been going on. The controversy has been rife. Yet, Hogwarts Legacy came out, a big game on PlayStation 5, and I think it was one of the most bought games of last year. It was one of the most sold games. It surpassed Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh my, you're kidding me.
No, it did. And there's even people who I was friends with or, you know, knew pretty well who were excited about buying the game. And I kind of had to look at them and be like, you're telling this to me? You know, a trans person who has actively been affected by J.K. Rowling's rampant transphobia, yet it didn't affect her sales, really. So her sales of books, yes, the media, yes, it's gone down a lot, and she's tried to cover that up. But with the games, and now there's a TV series in production.
Yeah. I think in regards to that, because there's always a big death of the author discussion whenever you talk about this. And when the game came out, it came back up again. And, you know, it goes back to talking about those Harry Potter adults who you say, don't do this, you know, don't buy this, don't endorse this, because it's doing active harm. And those people returned with, it's not doing active harm. I don't agree with her and her politics, but, like, I love the world and the game, and I'm able to separate author from work. However, from those sales, J.K. Rowling has since donated 70 grand to an anti-trans group in Britain.
Yeah, 70 grand. That is a life-changing amount of money.
It's insane. When you look at the sort of transactions, and people have screenshot it, you know, it's Deborah donated £5, Sergey donated £2, and then it's just J.K. Rowling 70 grand.
Yeah.
And that is going into actively trying to harm trans people.
Yes, yeah. So it's literally impossible now to argue that she's not doing any harm, because she's funding it, she's spreading it, she has a massive following, she has big political rapport as well, and it's very disturbing. And it's very strange.
And if you're not willing to let go of your love of a thing for the love of an imaginary world, for the sake of real people and their lives and their safety, then yeah, you need to look in the mirror and look at yourself.
Yeah.
Completely agree. Yeah.
There's a lot of great things out there you can love. We will talk about some of them.
We will.
You know, maybe we can come up with some things for you to enjoy instead.
Yeah. I think with that being said, probably brings us to the end, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was our big Harry Potter rant. I'm really glad we got that out of our system.
Yeah.
I think I needed to.
Yeah.
Got very tired near the end, just talking about her.
Yeah, we will not be talking about this again, because
No.
I don't think, like, you know, this is a very what's the word? I won't say brief, because we've been talking for about 45 minutes. But I will say it's a very concise sort of summary of everything wrong with the Harry Potter series as a book series.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then everything that J.K. Rowling has done personally and the people she's harmed.
Yeah, and there will be more. There is more, but we were not going to talk about it today.
Yeah, if you are interested though, and you haven't listened to the Witch Please podcast before, I would really recommend listening to that. You don't need to go all the way back to the beginning, but they started the series again after reassessing how they were engaging with Harry Potter, and each week they ended up going through the books with a different critical lens.
Okay.
And they go into kind of, you know, things that we've talked about, like race and gender and class and loads of different other kind of like academic theories. You know,
I think they're called Material Girls now, though.
yeah, true.
Yeah.
So it's called, is that the same podcast? Won't it have different names? Or
I don't know, but honestly, if you're sick of Harry Potter, listen to Material Girls instead.
yeah, that's even better. I recently listened to an episode they did on Dungeons and Dragons from a academic lens, and now I'm straight back in it. So yeah, it's fantastic. Go and give it a listen.
Brilliant. With that in mind, tune in next time where we'll be talking about something a lot more fun. And we'll probably be much happier about it instead of this doom and gloom. Thank you so much for listening, and you can follow us on Instagram at quantumegg, quantum.egg, that is, and you can follow us on Twitter at quantumeggcic. Thank you, and stay tuned for more. The Quantum Egg podcast is a project from Quantum Egg Theatre Company, a theatre company based in Manchester. Trans and neurodivergent led, we make radical, queer, groundbreaking theatre in tandem with talented emerging artists in our community. To find out more about our mission, visit the link in the description. Quantum Egg is a volunteer-run company. If you liked what you heard today and believe in our mission, you can donate the price of a cup of coffee by visiting our coffee page. That's ko-fi. Link also in the description. You can also help us out by giving us a 5-star review and telling us what you thought of today's episode. The Quantum Egg podcast is hosted by Charlie Wrigg, featuring Bo Warner and Sebastian Emerson. Edited by Bo Warner, sound designed by Anastasia Zhikova.